Good afternoon, Mr. Waters. Thank you for taking the time. Welcome to Dance Mobile Magazine.
Pleasure's all mine.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So let's get right into it. Can you give us a brief background on your history here in Newark, New Jersey?
Well, in reality, I'm a pure product of Newark. I have a 56-year tenure here. Born, raised, educated, and employed within the city of Newark. And the past 45 years of my life have been basically here within the West Ward of Newark. I think that my unique work experience as a municipal council aide, as a community organizer, and as a pension fund supervisor, in addition to my past tenure as a state county representative responsible for the temporary aid for needy families program, in addition to procuring grant funding for child abuse and prevention, gives me a unique perspective, you know, in terms of relating to the community from an administrative perspective to an upfront, close and personal, hands-on perspective.
Being here for that long, and me being born and raised here, and so is my parents, they used to tell me about a fun time in Newark. You don't often hear about that now. Can you recollect on the fun times, what it was like growing up in Newark?
I like to call it, and old timers refer to it as the Newark. You know, there was once upon a time when people spoke about Newark as that shining city on a hill, and I think fundamentally that period was a time frame when family values took precedence. You know, basic family values, and those family values in any community, they're the key to progress in any society and within any culture. You know, when we get robbed of those types of values, we face the kind of horrific scenarios we've seen over the past few months with 100 plus homicides, you know, all tragic. We need, as the old songs say, to bring back those very fundamental things in life. You know, just as a nurturing community. A nurturing community can only be possible in a city like Newark with an extremely strong police presence. You know, like our neighboring suburban towns and counties have. You know, a strong police presence, an emphasis on neighborhood services as it relates to sanitation and code enforcement, and basically a strong advocacy within businesses and corporations for not just a minimum wage, but a living wage, because the strange things happen when a man or woman has a living wage. All of a sudden they want to come home and spend family time, you know, with the kids. They want to do homework. They want to sweep off the front porch. I mean, real issues, quality of life issues take precedence over them because the whole mindset and the paradigm changes. Those are the days of old when it was a working class, middle class, working class community. Everybody knew each other. Everyone took stock in their community.
Seeing as that you've been a resident here for so long and you saw the change or the decline, how do you go about giving hope to the community when they don't see any hope in sight?
Well, there's the old saying, there's hope of a tree, that if it be cut down, it will sprout again, and the tender branch thereof shall not perish. I look at that tender branch as our children, which is, I think, first and foremost, if Newark is to progress and survive and evolve, our children need to progress, evolve, you know, and strive. A strange thing about children, if you give children the opportunity to be children, that is just what they will be, because that's their natural inclination. So clearly, we need to invest in recreational programs, dance, drama, you know, talking, speaking, speech competition. We need to do any and everything we can to engage our children, but engage them in such a way that's healthy. It's kind of difficult for our children to participate in all these programs, culturally enlightening and athletic enlightening programs, when they can't get from point A to point B. Yes. Because, you know, they're going from one turf to another turf and another turf. So we have to have a safe zone patches to and fro, and even at the sites where they're having their activities, because let's not forget, I was engaged in youth activities in Vailsburg Park as an umpire when I was brutally assaulted by a gang and almost lost my life, you know, in a county park where a county sheriff basically denied the incident ever took place. So we need to have a coordination between municipal, county law enforcement and entities, but more than that, we need to have sensitivity training for those in leadership and law enforcement who are trusted with serving and protecting us, so that they can be more focused
Yes.
in terms of just developing the appropriate strategies to get our kids from point A to point B and back home again safely.
Could someone who may have been a resident of Newark and has went on and got their education and they're successful, how can they contribute back into the community? How can people start to create programs to give back for the kids, for the community, without so much red tape involved? Because I know a lot of people that want to help, but because of so much red tape, they're like, nah, they can't. How do you encourage people to come help the community? Because that's what it needs. It needs for those who have gone on to be successful to come back, to uplift it. It can't just be Shaq. It can't just be, Tisha Campbell, Queen. Like, it can't be the usuals. We can't keep relying on them to do, what everybody can do. But also, it has to be a way for them to be open to receiving and giving.
Excellent point. And there's an old cliche that's applicable to anyone, no matter what stratum they find themselves on, and that's service is the rent we pay for our space here on earth. And I believe it's the ministry of service that's the rent we pay for our space here on earth. In terms of those individuals who've been here, who've been through this, and have moved on, and have become successful, and want to come back and transfer that success into the hearts, minds, and souls of others, youth and adults alike, the onus is on the administration to provide an way of operation, an easement to have those things done. In terms of facilities, Newark has a plethora of facilities. The municipal ruling parties, from the mayor's office to the council office, they ought to make sure they appropriate the funds and pass the appropriate legislation to allow those people who want to impart, positive things on the children of this city to happen. And administrative red tape can be a disaster. There was a point in time when, Pop Warner football weren't going to have football officials because of administrative red tape. There people officiating games were supposed to get paid that day and get paid 6 months later. Well, it seems as if the administration has gotten that point, because that whole process has been revised, has been eased, and it appears that we're turning that corner. So this is a very fertile time for those individuals who have programs, to bring back to the city of Newark. I believe they'll be met with welcome arms. And under my administration, that's something that's going to continue and perpetuate and evolve.
Okay. Speaking of your administration, you're currently running for councilman in 2014. Can you give the younger generation a prime example of what it means to be a councilman, what it means to you, what it represents exactly? What does the job entail? And also, what would be your immediate goals you would like to fulfill when elected? Because normally, politicians, they give us a broad scope of what they like to do, and then it's like, well, you didn't do that, and you didn't do that. And it's like, well, I did this one thing, but I think that if you give the public, some immediate change, they're like, okay, I'm buying into this, I can rock with you.
Well, it's first and foremost, people need to understand what the responsibilities of a municipal council member are. And there are three very simple points. There are to legislate, to create laws, to govern the municipality, to appropriate, to make sure the funds and the dollars are in place for programs, and to investigate those programs for quality control and see if they're effective or ineffective, and if they're ineffective, write the appropriate legislation to rearrange those programs or to revise them. In regards to what I intend to do during my tenure, is first and foremost being a very visible council person on the streets, in the homes, and in the council chambers. Second of all, I want to work hand in hand with who's ever on the second floor, whoever holds that seat of power, to making sure we create an appropriate law enforcement strategy. First and foremost, to rid and eradicate this culture of violence that seems to perpetuate all of Newark, not part of Newark, but all of Newark, because Newark can't go forward if everyone in this community is walking around in abject fear. So that's a number one priority for any municipality. Nobody's going to prosper. Nobody's going to invest, in public safety is at stake. In addition, I clearly want to work hand in hand to eradicating the structural deficit that we find ourselves in. But clearly, I would not want to do that at the expense or to compromise anybody's safety or welfare, particularly for those who entrusted me with their vote.
What would you say to the community about the recent violence of the young people? They seem to get younger and younger, and it's just not safe for them to go outside. I saw some kids on the way outside, and I'm like, wow, that's great, they outside, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, they shouldn't be outside. What do you say to the community and to the parents that, are losing their kids? How do they go about, not stopping them from being children and going outside? Like, what do you say to them to comfort everybody that's going on? Because with Facebook and social media, what's happening here, it goes right out to the world now without any media even knowing about it. Like, they're even showing pictures of, people getting shot and things like that on Nye Avenue. All this stuff is worldwide news now, so it's not like, oh, this is Newark's little secret. Everybody knows. A friend of mine called me from Florida. He was like, yo, I heard about this. Like, yo, are you okay? So what would you say to the community about that?
I would be disingenuous if I were to tell parents that, okay, it's okay and it's so right and let's just trust in the system. I would be disingenuous, and I refuse to be disingenuous. We're all living in a perpetual state of fear. For the last 3 days, I've played Santa Claus, making home visits to over several hundred families, and when the sun goes down, there's an element of fear and concern there. Whereas years ago, I would continue. I have to stop now. We have to look at this, and I'm going to quote an old biblical phrase, we have to look at the book of Nehemiah. Now it's time for this entire community to join hands and rebuild the walls of this broken city. And a lot of these walls are psychological walls, and they're economic walls, and they're emotional walls. I mean, we've got 2 and 3 generations who've pretty much have been mesmerized by this culture of violence. Through what they see in reality on the streets, through what they take in and incorporate through their music, through entertainment, and through media. That's a serious problem, and we have to wrap our arms around it. And once again, as we said initially, bring back some of those old cultural values, basically family value and family structure. If you're spending family time, if the mom and dad are participating in family activities, it acts as a buttress against the child being pulled to other activities. And clearly, the administration has to take the responsibility of providing the resources and the revenues so we can have those kind of programs that can compete against the other things, because every child wants to belong to a gang per se, to a group. They want that fraternal affiliation, and if we don't provide them with that, there's that other element that will. So we need to roll up our sleeves and go to work. I mean, no longer can we make deals in the back room, for economic reasons. We have to think about the true deal that's in the upper room, for what's ethically right, for what's morally right, and what coincides with the value of America and the value of this country. We all have to become community organizers, just like our president was, and get to doing some real work in the community.
Initially, I was going to ask you what made you the best candidate, but I think in this day and age, it's beyond that now. What makes you the best person for the position? What makes you different as a man?
Good question. And this just came from my spirit. I can remember as a child being fascinated by a book by Elijah Muhammad called Message to the Black Man. And fast forward in Newark today, I have a message, first and foremost, for corporate America, which is, if you're going to come into our city and make millions of dollars on us and off of us, we have to participate in that success. Newark is the mecca for capital investment in America. So a 14% unemployment rate is totally unacceptable. And we know they get tax breaks and incentives, and we know affirmative action is telling them you have to hire X number of Newarkers, but the response has always been, we would, but they're not qualified. Well, I submit to you that under my leadership and under my tenure, we'll make it compensatory that corporate America create the appropriate training programs so that John Doe and Jane Doe can become qualified to be a positive worker and contribute to their success and give a positive contribution to the success of the city of Newark. And that's a bold statement to make, because you have to factor in, well, is corporate America going to fund you for your re-election, et cetera, et cetera. Well, see, the Lord didn't tell me, Brother Waters, I want you to do this to get re-elected. He said, this is your season. And a season is what it is. It's summer, winter, spring, or fall. So what I had is an opportunity, a window of opportunity, a 4-year window of opportunity to make a difference, to create a new West Ward and to create a new arc. What's prepared me for this? Every breath that I've taken, every breath that my mother's mother's mother and my father's father has taken has prepared me for this moment. This is my season. I possess the administrative capacities, in regards to my work history. You buttress that with a bachelor's in urban sociology, a master's in public administration, a doctoral candidate in public policy and programming. And above and beyond all that, I've never lost touch with the salt of the earth. I'm on the ground, I will be on the ground, and long after this councilmatic season has sunset, as the old timers say, I'll still be on the battlefield for my Lord. That's the difference. This is just not technical service. This is my ministry of service. That's what this is.
Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it. And I just want to say, the fact that you even took the time to sit down with me, it just shows that you're practicing what you're preaching, as far as, sitting down with a young person and helping them and just showing that, this is what we need to do. We need to grab up our young people and support them in what they're doing, because by supporting me, you're supporting someone younger than me. I have a daughter, so she's going to know that and see that. She's going to look at this interview and be like, wow, Dad, you sat down with him? That's pretty big. It's not about me sitting down with Shaq. It's the same thing. You understand? You're the same person. We're no different. It's just the actual taking the time. Everybody confuses things with money and just, possessions and things like that, when time is the most valuable thing we have. The most valuable thing you can offer is yourself. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I'll never forget it, and I appreciate it, and I just want to say thank you.
I appreciate your responses, but, I hear the big names, but I tell my kids all the time, my kids look on me somewhat differently. I was a great athlete in Newark. I was inducted into the Newark Athletic Hall of Fame, etc. But I tell kids every time, you want to know who the real heroes are? You want to know what real gangster is? Because they use that term in terms of they give it, they do that term. Gangster is waking up every day, going to a 9 to 5, every day, 5-6 days a week, coming home, feeding your family, paying bills, waking up, doing it every day, again and again. Those are our real heroes. Real heroes are the factory workers, the firemen, the police officer, the postman. Those are the real heroes, and because those are the people we need our children to emulate, and that's something they don't see on TV. They see every day, up front, close and personal, and that's what I want to be with my people and my community, every day, up front, close and personal.
Well, thank you. We look forward to your leadership.
Thank you.